You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
I think it's pretty cool.
All right, babies, let's get this match on the road. We are the Brass Knuckleheads.
Hey everybody, this is Mike Balzer, All Things 3D, 3D in Review for 06/08/2018. And this is something from Kite and Lightning. Now, there's the guy that's been doing this, and sadly I've forgotten his name, and I'll have this playing in the background here. But what he's been able to do is literally use the iPhone 10, as you can see off on the right-hand side here, gee, it looks kind of familiar, huh? If you've been following this show. So he's basically extended out using that arm, the iPhone 10 that has allowed him to capture his motion while using a tracking motion capture suit. So he's able to capture the motion while talking. And he goes through at length here. The actual YouTube video link will be in the show notes. But he goes through there, and essentially he's utilizing this, even though he says there are some what do you call it? A little bit more noise than he desires, but he says the blend shapes have improved, as you can see. And he talks about somebody else helping him as far as providing blend shapes. But the whole point is this is being done literally on $1,000 phone. The motion tracker is a little bit more expensive than that, but the fact is that this is being done is just fantastic. So I'll just leave that and move right into my main camera. And my main camera, there we go. And go right into our first items. Now, some of you may not have liked my title, but I guess the point I want to make is if it's too good to be true, was it designed in China? And there's a reason for that. And one of the things that I have looked at, and also the fact is that I've owned a 4K piMax unit, is some of the misleading marketing, and especially, I mean, obviously there are plenty of companies that have been doing this, but they seem to be one of them that have made lots of claims, and one of them a lot of people have complained about, and I'll actually go out to their Kickstarter, is by using the term 8K. Now, yes, true, you would have horizontally 3840 by 38 by 40 or times 2, because you have two essentially panels in there. But because of that, they claim to be 8K, but what they're not identifying is that it's only 2160. So 3840 by 2160. So it's not a true 4K by 4K panel. And also the fact is more companies are starting to actually utilize the term per eye instead of the full length of the actual device itself. So the whole point is that they've raised over $4 million. And one of the things that I thought was a concern early on with this particular device is they were able to say, or claiming that they'd be able to support 90 hertz refresh. And we have found out since then that they would not be able to meet that. I think it's going to be something like 75. And I'm not surprised, because they also made a similar complaint with their 4K unit. But it has also come out to be that their 4K unit will only support a 30 hertz frame rate. And so if you're trying to do anything other than watch movies, you'd find that it would be somewhat nauseating. So we'll have to see here. Also, some people have identified that the tracking system isn't as good as it could be, but a lot of people are wowed by the fact is that you have such a wide FOV, and also the fact is that you are using 4K panels. And I did, if you listen to some of my earlier podcasts, that was the main point on the 4K VR system that they have, and that is because the pixels are so small. I think it's only like a 5.2-inch panel, if I remember correctly. You really don't see them, so you do have literally no pixel definition that you can see by the eye, and as we know, the screen door effect is also minimized. But they say there are some other issues in there that could be an issue. Um, but we'll have to see. The other thing is that they pushed it out again. For many people who have backed things on Kickstarter, including myself, that isn't a surprise. Many are postponed. A lot of people think if that helps get something fixed, great. But that kind of brings up kind of a bad word in the VR market, and that's 6sense and their STEM system, who is now almost going on 5 years. Yes, I know I talk about it all the time, but I just found out after talking to Addie from The Verge that they are pairing up, and let's see if I've got a little now. Here we go. With VR Sim to create a painting environment. And obviously, if you remember in one of my interviews with Amir, who was the CEO of 6sense, he pretty much identified that, Kickstarter backers may not get a product. It's kind of like for research, but I don't think many people who back products or projects on Kickstarter think that way. They hope to get an actual product, and sometimes they may or may not. And we've had a few now that have failed, and people are basically lost, or anywhere from 100 to 300. In my case, I've lost over $600. No explanation other than they keep updating their post, and many people are upset. And as mentioned before, I plan to take some legal action, because this is not the first time that they've gone elsewhere, basically touting their technology, getting other projects based upon the research money that they raised through Kickstarter and their pre-orders, that a lot of people were left with nothing. So they're still moving ahead, possibly making something off of our backs. We'll see, but I do not think that I'll probably be receiving anything. So I thought that was, thanks, Addie. And I apologize I think it was SimLabs EU, for using you in a tweet. That was not my intention. I need to look up VR Sim and basically identify how they're partnering with them using the 6sense or STEM technology. But on that note, let's take a look at some others. Now, I don't remember how to pronounce this. Dlodlo. There's been obviously a lot of names. This was canceled. Luckily, they were able to get 48,000, but they wanted 200,000, so they canceled it. They actually have created a product, and you can find it, I think, out at GearBest and a few other sites, but it's about $500, and it still requires a PC. They never came out with the smartphone attachment. But I do think it's kind of neat. It doesn't look this polished, but it's still kind of a neat looking thing. But again, is it worth $500 to $600, especially when you can, for I think less, about 350, or even about, I think it's 225. HP announced their own mixed reality headset you can buy that has 6 degrees of freedom, as well as the Oculus. I think you can buy for 350 now. Just having a pair of glasses that do nothing more than present your material with an IMU to provide head rotation, and no actual head tracking or 6 degrees of freedom kind of is missing the point here. And now that you have the Oculus Go for 200, even though it may have been cool, it was a little no pun intended, it was a small item with high hopes of big features, but it never actually materialized. And then this unit that has just been touted lately, and this was the AntVr mix unit. And there's a lot of concern about this. This is a Kickstarter. It has already exceeded its goal of raising 50,000. But it does have some very unique, and I did a little research on how they're actually doing things in these glasses, and I'm actually intrigued by it. Let's see, I think, what are we? We got 6 days to go for $449, so it's not too bad. But again, remember, this only has an IMU, and it has to be hooked up to a computer. But they do provide alternatives as far as providing 6 degrees of freedom. That is using, and I have one of these, and I can't say they're really that good, but if you see, that unit doesn't have it. But this unit here, and they should actually talk about it a little bit later. Here we go. The inside out tracking. And they actually don't mention it by name, do they? I can't remember now. But you can obviously use different types of devices, and they don't actually identify their inside or outside in tracking system. But you can purchase it yourself. I was able to get it when it was $200. I think it's like $300 now. But the important thing is this is an augmented or mixed reality system similar to the HoloLens, and it uses a unique technique. And I have some images here that I'm going to throw up that might shed a little bit more light. Actually, let's kind of run their little video.
It's our honor to introduce Mix. Mix is an AR device. It's small, like sunglasses. It has a 96-degree immersive field of view, and it's compatible with Steam VR. Most AR glasses promise to give you an experience like this, but
as you can see, they're taking a swipe at another company.
With the optical technology we invented, dual-channel mix.
So this dual-channel lens was kind of interesting, and I'll kind of bring down and let that just talk in the background. And what I have found out, that dual-channel lens actually is a polarized lens system, just like sunglasses. And knowing the background behind the LCD panels, which are twist and pneumatic, they are also polarized. So they used a unique feature to essentially magnify slightly through the polarized part of the lens, the display, while the rest of the external sighting is what you see. And here they actually have a camera up to it. Now, I'm a little concerned if it's actually that transparent. If it is, good for them. And literally, from my own experience, which we're going to talk about later, all you have to do is basically turn or remove the background from many objects, make them black, and they appear transparent in one of these. So it's very easy to transfer. Here they're showing the leap motion tracking unit, as well as a few other things. And some people are complaining, and I have to agree, you shouldn't be using other people's copyright as though you're in partnership with them. As you notice, there was the Ant-Man figure there, and at the end of this, you'll see another one. I also like the fact that they put laptops in laptop bags while activating. That's not a no-no, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So I'm actually very intrigued with this. The problem with them, and I'll jump back to their website, is that if you go out and click on the name, AntVr, they've actually had a couple of, let's see, where does it come up? Here we go. Let's see if I can click on that. So they came out with this all-in-one headset. And the problem is when it finally came out, it was very lackluster. And again, the same thing, they kind of showed it as being this very slim line. And I think the final product was kind of clunky, had this gun hooked up to it. And a lot of people were very disappointed, especially what was their charging price. I think it was like $270 for a beta version of it. And you can still find this on Amazon, so like $500 if I remember correctly. And so a lot of people were very disappointed. This came out around the same time. Let's see if they've got a date here. 14. So this was about the same time that Oculus was making their name. So they were trying to obviously ride the wave there, which seems kind of similar to what's going on now. They're trying to ride the wave with a few other type of products out there. One that we'll be talking about right now, and that is Magic Leap. If you got a chance, if you sign up as a developer or even just watched a video on your own, you, you may have noticed that they showed this off, but they didn't really do anything other than show off the hardware. Not saying that it doesn't work, but clearly just showing that off and talking about it is not the same thing as actually giving an actual reaction and maybe a camera view inside it. If you remember the early, even though I thought there were a little bit of a hyperbole there on Microsoft part by showing some of the demos that clearly did not show the FOV of what you're seeing in a HoloLens. You would think that they would start showing that in real time, but that was not the case. And here, let's see, who wrote this? Ben, who does a great job. And even though I appreciate him being critical, he's not mean to any of these companies. And I really appreciate the technical expertise that he has in this area and bringing that to light. They actually had written an article the day before, and then here they've probably just added to it. So many people were disappointed that they didn't see more, myself included. So the question is, will this really live up to the hype? The fact is that using their developer kits, they're moving more into the, what do we call it, the cartoon shaded cell type look, which tells me that their little pocket unit they have on their side doesn't have a lot of processing power, and they're trying to minimize the detail, textures, and mesh information on that. Now, that could just be a style, but something tells me this isn't the powerhouse that people were hoping, and I have a feeling that if they don't price this, let's say $1,500 or less, I think a lot of people are going to just pass it by because there are other solutions. One being, if you want to get into this by yourself, there is Leap Motion, and they just unveiled the rest of their project North Star and how to make your own. Sadly, you have to have a lot of engineering experience to move forward with it. They do provide the mechanicals, and I don't even, I think there may be STLs, I don't remember. But more importantly, they don't provide a printed circuit board to populate it with components. They do identify the components they're using to build their driver board and also list out the panels. But if you try to look them up, you'll find that they're very obscure unless you go directly to the manufacturer. And good luck with that. Some are better than others, but you're going to pay probably $150 to $200 a panel. So this thing could probably wind up costing you $500 to $750 when you're done. And that's because you have to make everything one off. A lot of people are hoping that this will be launched as a Kickstarter. I think it's a really cool design, but if you're wanting to experiment, don't expect to be able to put this together. In fact, they don't even have a source for the lenses, which means you would have to take their parameters and go to a lens mill. In fact, if you remember reading the earlier article, they had lenses created and actually carved out and put in here. So it's not going to be cheap. But again, hopefully somebody will get enough people together and maybe make a large order. Other than that, the fact is that it's 120 frames. There's this, I've actually have some comments in here. Somebody made a point that it is 120 hertz, but again, that makes the panel somewhat esoteric. And also the resolution is pretty good, 1600. Well, it's actually great, 1600 by 1440. But as I have suggested, these are what, 3.5-inch panels. You can get, if you pull apart, and you can buy them for about 150 used, but get yourself a mixed reality headset. Just basically pull out all the parts carefully. If you get the Acer, I think it's easier to detach the actual LCD panels from the lens box. But if you get like a used Acer for about $150, just pull all the parts, the driver board, and the cameras. And there's another product, and I'm not going to show it now, but I'll show you what I've been working on. But it's literally, you can put them into another housing that you can buy for about $35. Has a lens system that's in front of it. So it's very similar to this. The panels themselves would ride above it, were off to an angle, and then they would just project into it. Where this one, they have them off to the side. And then just kind of mount the board on top of that. And I think, yeah, for the most part, you should be able to do this and keep it all together. The only concern would be, could you mount those cameras for the stereo slam properly in order to provide 6 degrees of freedom? And then can you work with this outside the system? As a developer in the Windows Media Reality, you could launch it individually and get the effect, but launching it directly from the Windows Media Reality launch site would obviously be difficult. But I tinkered with that already, and yes, it does work. It's kind of funky to finally get into the application, but it is a great way if you want to do 6 degrees of freedom, allow you to actually walk around an object. This could be a very cool way. Just get yourself a used headset, pull it apart, and then I'll provide you the frame so that you can actually put those together. Again, it's not going to be 120 hertz. It's only 90 hertz if you got a good PC, 75 if I remember correctly if you're using like a Nook, but it works pretty cool. And if all your objective is to create something on your own, the parts are readily available. And as I said, they're all contained. You just have to basically mount them and make sure they're secure, and it should work okay. So the other thing that I'm going to bring up later is, if you've already got a smartphone that can do AR Core or AR Kit, there's a couple of products out there. One that I just tried out, I'll have a few more samples coming in, that looks funky as hell, but it gives you a great way of looking at AR material through like a viewer to kind of give yourself a very budget-friendly HoloLens. And so we're going to talk about that later. All right, well, that's enough about the AR stuff. Actually, there's one more item. I'll go ahead and talk about that. I was going to wait till later, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. And this is another unit that just came out. You can buy it for $400. And there's some controversy because this looks a lot like another device out there, which I won't mention their names, because the guy used to work for him. So I guess I don't know if the suit has been settled, but the other company sued them. But this is from Dreamworld. As you can see, it's not a very, it's a basic unit, but essentially you can hook this up. It's got 2.5K resolution. It's obviously decently priced. You can pre-order it now. It should be available at the end of June. 2.5K resolution, only 60 hertz. Remember the last product. And there may be a reason for that. And then it does hand gestures, which means it has something like the leap motion so that it can track your hands. It does not seem to provide 6 degrees of freedom, so you can't really move around. In fact, it only has marker-based positional tracking, but it does have a 1080p camera, so you could possibly do an ocular slam with it. It's not the best solution, but that is a possibility. Or there are going to be plenty of stereo slam solutions that you could hook up to it, because I do think there is a jack on it that you can support other devices. It does say that you require 2 USB 3 ports and 1 HDMI 1.4. And then if you have an Android device, it has to have a USB Type-C. And that's kind of interesting how they're going to be doing this, because not all USB Type-C support video out. In fact, do they have a list here? I think they identify somewhere what actual phones, and it appears none of the Pixels can be used. So that's kind of disappointing. I think a lot of the Samsungs. And here we go. So Samsung S8, S8 Plus, Note 8, Huawei Mate 10, 10s, and then an HTC. And again, I'm pretty sure it's because and then they said iPhone, iPad support in the future. But more than likely, this is done in order to feed video into the panel itself. So I'm kind of curious if they're actually supporting this at its full 2.5K resolution through an Android type device. Some of the solutions I've seen can only go up to 1080p, so who knows? But the fact is that you can run it off an Android phone is kind of cool. So that's kind of neat, and it's relatively inexpensive, $399. And if it works as good as this other product, yeah, I think it's kind of neat. Sadly, I don't have $400 to throw around everywhere, especially if it's just to see how cool it is. and maybe you don't either. So stay tuned, because I think I have a better solution if you don't mind really looking like a nerd, if this isn't nerdy enough for you. All right, let's look at a few other items. What do we got coming up next? Well, this is 3D technology, and I thought this was kind of cool. Let's see. Multi-material voxel 3D printing. If you remember last week, we talked about using kind of a dot matrix where you increase and decrease the size, kind of like newsprint, in order to create models that had different densities. This is a technique that seems very similar to that, and there's an actual paper that I'll head to in a minute. But if this is the quality of some of the objects actually created, that's pretty neat. Obviously, printing these with this kind of shading is kind of neat. And these don't actually expand, but here's an idea here. Now, again, as I mentioned these are limited to more expensive printers. You're not going to be able to do this on your consumer FDM printer. But the fact is that you could create this commercially available multi-material 3D printers, and it tells you the resolution. And here is the actual gradation being created in here. So, and here's the article, the paper on it. So if you want to take a look at how to do this and the information behind it, it kind of goes through that process here. All right, well, I'm not going to get any much detail into that. Let's move on to the next item. This is kind of neat, and I may actually contact them. Being here now in Portland, Oregon, this is OHSU, and they have been working with a company out of Florida, or actually University of Central Florida, nonprofit company, to create bionic arms. But what makes these unique is that they also have a control circuit in them. And so what they're able to do is working with children born without arms to actually do a clinical trial. And so here we go. And I guess and here's a little video. And sadly, I don't have audio for this. But if you go out to the article, which will be in the show notes, you can listen to it, but he's talking about it. But the cool thing is that I guess that's a battery behind it and a control module. He is able to actually cause the fingers to actually move electronically. Now, if you remember, there have been other arms that have been made for kids, but they don't have that kind of nerve control. So the fact is that they're able to do this, and it's now being trial tested, I think is pretty cool. So here's Albert Chi. So I'm going to try and contact him, see if he'll come on the show to talk about it more, maybe in the next couple of weeks. So I thought that's pretty neat. Kind of reminds me of Luke Skywalker. Oh, look, different plates to be changed over. Well, and if you've been following the show or just following 3D printing and the program behind this, what makes this great is that a child's arm or bone structure changes over the years. So these can be quite expensive. The fact is that we can readily print these very quickly, custom make them based upon scanning maybe their other arm. This makes this process very cool and allows them to be made larger as the child grows and becomes an adult. And so, again, sadly, I can't show or listen to audio while I'm on this particular monitor, but there he is actually clamped his head down. Kind of neat. Oh, well, let's move on to the next item, and I will contact Dr. Chi later. Okay, I thought this was cool. As you know, I've covered Itzy's 3D many times in the past. In fact, I have worked with them with my lens system in order to provide this kind of quality. But now they're capable of taking a single image, like they show here, and you can actually go out. There's a little plugin you can try out. But essentially, if you feed them a single image, it will create a 3D object from it, and then you can apply facial gestures to it. And they've done a few of them, and in fact, they have a few samples, one of them being Putin. So if you go out to my Twitter account, you'll see that I create a little GIF of Putin winking and blowing a kiss at you. Maybe that was to Trump. I don't know. Okay, moving on. So I thought that was kind of cool. The fact is, just a single image, you can create these fairly decent 3D objects that can be used in games. They have a Unity plugin so that you can basically have the person playing the game either probably use their camera, scan themselves, and then they become a part of the game, which I think is kind of cool, more immersive. All right, so we already covered Dream World. I'm giving her a shout out. This is Len Reed. She does basically tutorials for Unity shaders. So if you're into VR, AR, many of the times you require shaders, and shaders are used to create. In fact, she's got a nice one here. They're used to give water effects. So essentially, they affect the way light is created, and in this case, it's a little animated water, but they're used to make starburst, flames, smoke, and she goes through and gives basically C# and tutorials on how to create them on your own. Plus, just going through these, you can get a better idea of other shaders that other people have by opening up their C# code and have a better idea of understanding it. She has a few in here. Let's see, waving grass shaver. So, and then she has a few others. So if you're an ice shader, so if you want to learn how these shaders are created, these are really nice. She's pretty basic. So if you don't know anything about programming, I can't go that far. But if you have a little understanding of programming, C#, I don't think you'll have any trouble following these. So hats off, Lynn. Appreciate you putting the effort and making these available for free for people to use and learn from. Okay, so that's about it in the news. So what I want to get into now is talk about two items. So let me jump back to my main camera. So a couple things. One, I told you that I was going to do a mixed reality headset on the cheap. So here it is. Da, da, da. So yes, you think I look geeky in previous episodes. That's an understatement. How about this? So one of the things I noticed, so I use this headband. It's the same one that I use with my Neo DVR headset. I use it with a GoPro mount. Sadly, the GoPro mount that I had with it had a less than desirable adhesive on it. So I've replaced it with 3M. I forget the acronym for it. But it looks kind of funky. And if you look at it from my profile, it looks like a periscope. Well, in fact, and that's kind of what it is. It's a periscope. So if you can see under here, it's a semi-mirrored, and most of these things use semi-mirrors. And then it has a Fresnel large lens that slightly magnifies your phone, and then has another mirror to project it so that you can see out into the real world. What's really nice about this, they have a sleeve so that if you want to just basically view any, and actually I'm going to go to a little one that I created. Here he is. So you can't see it, but I'm going to go ahead and jump to this camera. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my friend Vince. Okay, so there he is. But when I put it inside the helmet here, let's see if I can do this. There we go. You just slide it right in. And when you look at it, it's a little top heavy. I've actually added some foam to it on the bottom so it doesn't jam into my nose. So it does rest on your bridge of your nose a little bit too much. But you can tighten up the band to keep that from doing it. But now I'm able to view right now with the camera, because you remember what you're seeing here projects the camera behind it, but it gives you a very low cost, yes, somewhat cheesy way of viewing augmented reality with or without the headband. I've mounted the headband so I can move around and have my hands free. See, I now have them in front of my head so you can see them. And but it looks like Vince is painting there right in front of me on my desk. So it's kind of neat. Now, I was hoping, well, actually, I don't know why I'm showing the background here, but if you basically turn off the camera, and in Unity, that's fairly simple to do. I'll send a link to how I did it. I'll just do a screenshot for you if you're interested. But if you turn it off, then you get a black background. And the black background, when it appears through a semi-mirrored surface, appears translucent or invisible or transparent. So then all you see through the semi-mirror here is the background with the projected image from your camera. And the fact is that it's on my head and I can move around. And because I have positional tracking, which is not locked, well, it does work, trust me. Actually, let me try it again. I always hate it when these demos don't work. So the cool thing is because the camera is available, so I'm going to start it again. Okay, so let's see if there we go. Okay. So if you put this like not on my desk, which isn't working very well, but let's say you set this up so that you're in the middle of your room, you will be able to walk around, look off to the side. As you can see, it's rotating, and be able to literally walk around this AR object without having to have something in your hands. And also, it's in front of your eyes. So here's the cool thing: you can do this just if you want to get this. It's a cardboard little fold out for $14.95. And let me show you where it is on the website. Okay, let me take that off. There we go. So you can go out to Amazon. It's called Viewfind AR Kit. It's only $14.99. And yeah, basically you could just throw your phone in. It's got a little sleeve. So if you didn't want to do any of your own development, you can take pretty much any AR, both for AR Kit, meaning iPhone, or AR Core, and slide it in there. The little sleeve basically closes off the semi-mirror so that you're basically looking at things through the camera. It's not fantastic. I highly suggest finding something with a black background. Then it's transparent, and then it kind of looks like a HoloLens, except it's only $14.95. Now, this is like a original Google Cardboard. You have to hold it, but you can also, as I have shown here, mount it. I'll send out a link, but you can make this off of Shapeways. It's in beta right now, which essentially it'll come. I'll make both of these available. You can print out different size stems so that you can adjust. And let me jump back to my main camera because things are funking around on this. The word I used was funking, just if you were wondering. Okay, so essentially it goes in here. This headband here can support a GoPro. I have a special little connector for it. And then this is just a standard GoPro piece that with a lock that I have some 3M adhesive on the bottom, so it locks to the back of this. So altogether, about $50, you can make this. This headband here is made so it supports a, let's see, what is it? A 3M, it's for these safety visors. For about $5. So about $30, you can buy the headband, another $3 for the rest of these components here, and then $15 for this. So again, around $50, you can make this and mount it on your head. Yeah, it doesn't look very good. It's not fancy, but it does work, and it's kind of cool, and it works. And I think you'd be surprised. And really, just buy the unit itself for $14.95 or $14.99. Try it out before spending $400. You may not even like AR. You may want to stick with VR. So try it out first, and before wasting your time, let me jump back to it. Again, you can buy it on Amazon. There's probably a few other places. They've been really nice, very supportive. I may have some new ideas as far as like I said, putting some foam around the nose piece, especially if you make a headband for it, because it's just cardboard and it kind of bites in your nose. So that makes it a little more comfortable. Here's some of the images. So it's not fancy, but for $14.99, it gives you a good exposure to what AR can look like in front of your eyes instead of just looking at a phone or an iPad. It's kind of cool. There are some other products out there, one that's also made out of cardboard, but I think it's like $50. So you can look at that. It looks like it's a little sturdier cardboard, and they have, it's not listed down here. And then there's a couple of plastic components, one that I will show a little bit later. I think I've shown it on an earlier show. But again, they're all around 50s. So if you want to dabble into something that you can just stick in front of your eyes, take a look at this. It's just been released shortly, and it really lives up to, I should give them a 5-star. Yeah, $14.99 is not a lot to spend on something to experiment with. And again, I've got this little mount that I've created for it, but you could just go use a GoPro head mount. It's one of those elastic bands. Big difference is it is a little top heavy or front heavy, so you will need a little support there. But you can figure out what you want with it, and works kind of neat. All right, so that's it. The other thing I want to cover real quick, and let's see, yeah, I think I can do this. So this is what I call affectionately the, do I have it upside down? Yes. The VR lap pack. And essentially, if you've got an Asus or any 15.6-inch laptops about this size, I found that that basically taking something that you would use to raise it to get access or put the keyboard at a better angle, I use as a back plate. This mount here, if you missed the last episode, is something that you would use to hold one of those fumigating tanks or leaf blowers. And it's not the most comfortable, but it's very effective. It has both a waist belt and shoulder. And the cool thing is that your laptops aren't that heavy, and the fact is the weight is distributed on your back. It's almost, I felt it was not noticeable. So the way that this is supported, if you notice, there's a strap. But the other thing, let's see if I can do this and not cause myself to go off air. I'll dump it to another camera, so give me a moment. Okay, here we go. Okay, so essentially there's a buckle system, and then there's basically 2 Velcro strips. They have an 18 version, but that wasn't long enough. I think these are 36 inches. I will have a list on Amazon. They're about $5 a piece, and you essentially loop them through. I'll go ahead and take it off. But the important thing is that you can still have access to the keyboard and your trackpad, get it all set up. If you notice, there's this little magic golden, it's a mini, I want to say dual port, but that's not it. No, I can't think of the name of it. But you can find this. They're like dummy phantom ports. And this is the important thing I found within Windows mixed reality systems, that if you close the lid, even if you have them so they don't go into sleep mode, it does shut down the Windows Media or Windows mixed reality headset. This basically, if you mirror your main display, you're able to close the lid and function. Also, the reason that I've designed this instead of just throwing it in a backpack, if you're aware, there's a reason why you have all these fans inside of it and ventilation slots. It gets hot, and if you put it in a standard laptop bag, the whole bag just gets hot, and essentially it just shuts down your machine or causes it to underclock and obviously affecting your performance. This way, you have full ventilation off to the sides and the back, because it's just a frame, which I should be able to pull out now. And there you go. So I mounted it with some screws, put a little bit of my favorite gaffer's tape so it doesn't scratch up the bottom. And like I said, for about $50 with straps, this little magic video dongle, you can create your own VR what did I call it? Lap pack. So the next, if I see that people have more interest in something like this, I'll just customize something and have it milled so that it fits the feet and more securely, and then basically build strap mounts that are specific to the Velcro straps. So it's a little more elegant. But, if you're not interested in what looks pretty, just need some function, I'll put together a little Amazon list, less than $50, and you can throw your laptop on your back. It's comfortable, well ventilated, and I've run around for about an hour. And you could take it outdoors, you can run it indoors. And then next week, I'm going to cover something that I've been working on. I haven't finished completing the mount, but I found these, again, thanks to Amazon and a few other sites, these low cost batteries that work great. If you know that most laptops are supported by like a 19-volt power supply, and most of the batteries out there that I've found have actually been like 12 volts. I've been using a 14.8 volt Anton Bauer battery. And so I've just found a battery that was even cheaper, lithium ion, but supplies 20 volts. So I may have already given away everything. But the magic is to make a mount for it. So I've been working with that and testing it. I ran the laptop. And the cool thing is, since the laptop already has a battery, then essentially when you add this other battery to it, it just charges the battery inside. And let's see, I have a 6 ampere hour battery. It's essentially depleted but fully charged laptop. So it was kind of cool that I was able to continuously keep this going for about 2 hours of activity with a very small, compact, about the size of a fist battery pack. And if you wanted to get fancy, you can make a double. My goal when I get my Hades Canyon is to build a smaller version of this. Let's go back to this screen. Make a smaller version of this that fits basically in the middle of your back. And then down here, I will have the 2 battery packs mounted with a little control circuit to tell the Hades Canyon that you have a battery back or powered system on it, so it doesn't just shut down when they deplete. And then you can also hot swap them. So there'll be 2 of them. And the nice thing about the Hades Canyon is that they have 2 different versions. The VR ready one is about 100. I want to say 100 watts, if I remember correctly. And if that's the case, that's far less than some of these laptops. And with my Nook, which is about 65, 75, I'm able to get 3 hours on a battery. So pretty cool process. And I'll have more to go on later on. And next week, I'll talk about the battery circuit, and the mounting. And if you have a 3D printer, I'll provide you the STLs or where to locate them. If you don't, there's a guy in New York that's 3D printing them on eBay and does a good job of getting them right out to about 3 days of shipping from one coast to the other. So he's very reputable and reliable, and essentially one of those and a specific type of connector to use with the Nooks or the laptops is all you need. And yeah, exciting type of things that you can buy for very little money and basically do everything that some of these 2000 plus VR backpacks, or not even I guess a VR backpack system. But if you've already got a VR ready laptop, why spend the extra money? Works just as well. And if you're thinking about getting Hades Canyon, which I am, it provides all that and more. And then I'll show you, if you've not seen my earlier Nook and my own VR budget backpack, I've used a 7-inch and a 3.5-inch touch panel to be able to control the units. So you just attach it to Velcro on your chest once you've got it all set up, and you're off and running for up to about 3 hours. So it's pretty cool. And I think, a lot of people are saying, well, they're going to have these new wireless systems, but I think they have their own issues. Plus, they are also battery driven, and they have to drive the headset as well. And they're a very compact battery. And sadly, they mount these things all on your head. So it makes it even more top heavy. So this, I think, is, in my opinion, a better solution. Putting a laptop on your back is a little cumbersome if you're doing it all by yourself. But having a dual strap system plus one to prevent any lateral motion is pretty effective and keeps it safe and sound. Okay, well, that's a bit about it for the show. There's one other thing. Oh, if you're in the Portland, Oregon area or the Vancouver area, I am changing my venue, but on the 20th of June at 6:30 to 8 o'clock at the Wacom. That's the way you pronounce it, by the way. I met up with Maggie today, and we discussed them supporting by providing their experience center for the meetup. If you're not familiar with it, I'm hosting a meetup called VR/AR nuts and bolts, and I'll be talking a little bit about some of the things that I've done, tips and tricks in Unreal and in Unity, other development issues, as well as I think Josh will be talking about some of the things he's created using Unity. But the goal is to get people to talk about their development, tips and tricks, nuts and bolts, whatever you want to call it, in that environment. So if you're in the Portland or Vancouver, Washington area and want to head out to it, again, it's the 20th of June, 2018, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. I think we'll have some type of refreshments. We'll have to see on budget, but at the Wacom Experience Center. And I'll have all that in the meetup. And if you haven't joined the meetup and you're in this area, please do. Love to see you there. I was hoping for $3 a month, but it's on a donate basis. So if you can't afford it, or if you want to see if it's worth your $3, you're welcome to make that decision at a later time. Okay, that's it for me. I will see you next week, possibly, once I get this battery pack. If I don't make any progress on it, maybe 2 weeks out. Again, enjoy your weekend. And this is All Things 3D in Review for another week in 2018. Bye.